They say the person you'd take a bullet for is often the one behind the gun. For Isabella, the bullet wasn't lead, it was a piece of paper. Served on a rainy Tuesday, 3 weeks before her due date. Her husband, Caleb, didn't just want a divorce. He wanted to erase her. He thought he was discarding a penniless, burdensome waitress to climb the social ladder with a younger, wealthier woman. But Caleb made a miscalculation that would cost him everything. He didn't know that the woman scrubbing his floors wasn't just Isabella the barista. She was Isabella Sterling, the hidden heiress to the largest private equity empire on the East Coast. And she wasn't just losing a husband. She was waking up. The rain in Seattle doesn't wash things clean. It just makes the grime slicker. That's what Isabella was thinking as she stared out the window of the cramped 2-bedroom apartment in Bellevue she shared with Caleb. She was 8 months pregnant. Her ankles were swollen to the size of grapefruits, and her lower back throbbed with a dull, rhythmic ache that had become her constant companion. She turned as the front door clicked open. She expected a smile, maybe a complaint about the traffic on I-5. Maybe, just maybe, a hand on her stomach to feel the baby kick. Instead, Caleb walked in with a man in a cheap grey suit. "Caleb," Isabella asked, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Who is this?" Caleb didn't look at her. He looked at the floor, then at the wall, then at his expensive Tag Heuer watch, a gift Isabella had bought him by saving her tips for 6 months. He looked everywhere except at his wife. "Isabella." Caleb said, his voice devoid of the warmth that had convinced her to marry him 3 years ago against her family's silent wishes. "This is Mr. Henderson. He's my attorney." The air left the room. Isabella's hand instinctively went to her belly. "Attorney Caleb, what's going on? Is it the business? Did something happen at the firm?" Caleb finally looked at her. His eyes were cold, hard flint. "It's not the firm, Bella. It's us. It's over." Mr. Henderson stepped forward, extending a thick manila envelope. "Mrs. Montgomery, these are dissolution papers. Caleb has filed for divorce." Isabella laughed. It was a brittle, sharp sound. "Divorce Caleb, I'm due in 3 weeks. We have a nursery to finish painting. We have a life." "I have a life," Caleb corrected, stepping past her to the kitchen counter, where he poured himself a glass of water, not offering her one. "You have a fantasy. Look, Bella, let's be real. This isn't working. It hasn't worked for a long time. You're stagnant. I'm rising. I just made junior partner. I need a partner who fits that world. You're still just—" He waved his hand vaguely at her, encompassing her oversized thrift store sweater and messy bun. "I'm the mother of your child," she whispered, the shock turning into a cold dread. "And that's the only reason I'm being generous," Caleb said. "Mr. Henderson has drafted a settlement. You get the car, the Honda, and $10,000 cash. In exchange, you sign full custody rights over to me once the child is weaned, and you leave this apartment tonight." "Tonight?" she choked out. "Caleb, it's pouring rain. I have nowhere to go. My family is— You know, my parents are gone." It was a lie she had told him when they met. A lie to protect herself from men who only wanted her billions. She had told him she was an orphan from Ohio. "That's not my problem anymore," Caleb snapped. "And honestly, I need the place empty. Tiffany is moving in tomorrow." The name hung in the air like toxic smoke. Tiffany. Tiffany Rochefort, the daughter of Caleb's boss, a woman who wore Balenciaga to grab coffee and treated waiters like furniture. Isabella had met her once at a company Christmas party. Tiffany had looked at Isabella's off-the-rack dress with a sneer that could curdle milk. "You're leaving me? For Tiffany?" "Tiffany understands ambition," Caleb said, puffing out his chest. "She can open doors you can't even see, Bella. With her by my side, I'll be running the firm in 5 years. With you, I'm just the guy with the waitress wife who smells like old milk and diapers." Isabella looked at the man she had loved. She looked at the man she had scrubbed floors for, the man she had cooked for, the man for whom she had walked away from a legacy of billions just to prove that love was real. She realized then that love might be real, but Caleb was fake. She didn't cry. That was the strange part. The tears didn't come. Instead, a distinct icy clarity washed over her. It was the blood of her grandfather, the ruthless oil tycoon Silas Sterling, waking up in her veins. $10,000, Isabella said softly. "Take it or leave it," Caleb sneered. "If you fight me, I'll bury you in legal fees. I know you have nothing, Bella. No savings, no family, no degree that matters. You're nothing without me." Isabella took the envelope from the lawyer. She stared at it. Then she looked Caleb dead in the eye. "I'll sign," she said, "but I want one change. I want you to sign a waiver. A complete separation of assets retroactive to the beginning of the marriage, and a forfeiture of any future spousal support from me to you." Caleb laughed a loud barking sound. "From you to me, Bella, you make minimum wage plus tips. I make 6 figures. Trust me, I don't want your pennies. Add the clause Henderson. Let her feel like she won something." The lawyer scribbled on the document. Isabella signed. Caleb signed. "Pack your bags," Caleb said, checking his watch again. "Tiffany is coming over at 8 o'clock to measure for new curtains. I want you gone by 7:30. Isabella packed one suitcase. She took her comfortable maternity leggings, the knit blanket she was making for the baby, and a small, locked metal box she kept hidden in the back of the closet. A box Caleb had never bothered to look at, because he assumed it held cheap trinkets. She dragged the suitcase to the door. Caleb was on the couch watching Bloomberg TV, drinking a scotch. He didn't look up. "Leave the key on the counter," he grunted. Isabella placed the key on the granite countertop. She paused for a moment, looking at the back of his head. "Caleb," she said, her voice steady. "Remember this moment. Remember that you chose this. Just go, Bella." He waved her off. She walked out into the rain. The door clicked shut behind her, sealing off the last 3 years of her life. The rain was torrential, soaking her instantly. She dragged her suitcase toward the beat-up Honda Civic parked on the street, but she didn't get in. She stood on the sidewalk, the water running down her face, mixing with the first hot tears of rage. She looked at the lit window of the apartment. She saw Caleb's silhouette. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a phone. Not the cracked iPhone 8 Caleb knew about. This was a sleek black satellite phone she had kept charged and hidden for 3 years. Her fingers trembled as she dialed a number she hadn't called since the day she ran away. Ring. Ring. Sterling Residence Chief of Staff Arthur Pennyworth speaking. A crisp British voice answered. Isabella took a breath. Her voice changed. The tremble vanished, replaced by an imperious, ironclad tone that had been bred into her since birth. "Arthur, it's Isabella." There was a silence on the line, so profound she could hear the static. Then a gasp. "Miss Isabella, good heavens, is it really you? We thought—" "I'm alive, Arthur, but I'm done playing commoner. Miss Isabella, your father. The chairman has been searching for you for 3 years. He's had private investigators in every state, Where are you? I'm in Bellevue, Washington, on the corner of 4th and Main. She looked down at her soaked belly. Arthur, send the jet, and send the car, the armored one. Immediately, miss. Is everything all right? Isabella looked back at the apartment window one last time. No, Arthur. Everything is wrong. But I'm about to make it right. And Arthur, yes, miss. Call the legal team. The Sharks. I want the Scorched Earth unit on standby. I need to buy a law firm, and I might need to buy a building. Which building, miss? The one my ex-husband lives in. 30 minutes later, the neighbors of that quiet Bellevue street peered out from behind their blinds in confusion. The beat-up Honda Civic was still there, but a caravan of 3 blacked-out Cadillac Escalades had pulled up to the curb, flanking a long silver Rolls-Royce Phantom. 2 men in earpieces and tactical suits stepped out of the lead SUV, holding large umbrellas. They opened the back door of the Rolls-Royce. Isabella, soaking wet, her cheap sweater clinging to her pregnant form, didn't look like a queen. But the way she stepped into that car, chin-high, eyes dry, told a different story. Inside the car, the air smelled of aged leather and expensive cologne. An older man with silver hair and a face carved from granite sat there. Alistair Sterling, the man who owned half of Manhattan's skyline and significant portions of the global shipping industry. He looked at his daughter. He looked at her belly. His eyes widened, his stern facade cracking for a millisecond. Isabella, he breathed. Hello, Daddy, she said, leaning back into the heated seats. Who did this? Alistair asked, his voice low and dangerous. He gestured to her wet clothes, her suitcase. Who put my daughter on the street in the rain? A mistake, Isabella said, rubbing her stomach. I made a mistake. I fell in love with a man who loved money more than he loved me. He divorced me, Dad. He kicked me out because he thinks I'm poor. Alistair Sterling's face darkened. He doesn't know. He thinks I'm Bella Smith, the waitress. Alistair poured a glass of sparkling water from the car's crystal decanter and handed it to her. What do you want to do? Do you want me to crush him? I can have him fired by morning. I can have his credit score wiped. I can buy the bank that holds his mortgage and foreclose tomorrow. Isabella took a sip. She looked out the tinted window as the car began to glide away, leaving the Honda Civic and her old life behind. No, she said softly. That's too easy. He wants to climb the ladder, Dad. He wants to be a big shot. He wants to be in our world. She turned to her father, a small, cruel smile playing on her lips. Let him climb. Let him get to the very top. Let him think he's won. I'm going to disappear for a while. I'm going to have my son. And when I come back, I'm going to be the one waiting at the top of the ladder to push him off. Alistair smiled. It was a terrifying expression. That's my girl. Welcome home, Isabella. As the Rolls-Royce sped toward the private airfield, Isabella opened the folder Mr. Henderson had given her. The divorce papers. She looked at Caleb's signature one last time. Caleb Montgomery. Enjoy Tiffany, she whispered, because she's the most expensive mistake you'll ever make. For the next 4 years, Isabella Montgomery ceased to exist. In her place, Isabella Sterling was reborn. She didn't stay in Seattle. The day after the divorce was finalized, the private jet whisked her away to the Sterling family estate in the Swiss Alps, a fortress of glass and stone overlooking Lake Geneva. It was here, surrounded by snow-capped peaks and silence, that she gave birth. It was a difficult labor. For 12 hours, the best doctor's money could buy hovered over her. When the baby finally cried, a lusty, strong sound that echoed off the sterile walls, Isabella wept. Not from sadness, but from relief. She named him Alexander Alistair Sterling. He had Caleb's dark curls, but he had the sterling eyes, piercing, intelligent, and unyielding. While Isabella was learning to be a mother, she was also relearning how to be a shark. Her father, Alistair, didn't let her rest for long. "The world thinks you are weak because you hid," Alistair told her one evening as they sat by the fire, Alexander sleeping in a bassinet nearby. "You need to remind them that a Sterling doesn't hide. She waits." So Isabella went to work. She didn't go back to college. She didn't need to. She had the best tutors in the world. She sat in on board meetings via encrypted video links, her camera off, listening to CEOs of Fortune 500 companies tremble before her father. She learned the art of the hostile takeover. She learned how to dismantle a company's assets with a single signature. She learned that mercy was a commodity she could no longer afford. Meanwhile, back in Seattle, Caleb Montgomery was living the life he thought he wanted. He married Tiffany Rochefort 3 months after Isabella left. It was the wedding of the season featured in the Seattle Times style section. Tiffany wore a $20,000 Vera Wang dress. Caleb wore a bespoke tuxedo. They looked perfect. But the rot set in quickly. Tiffany wasn't Isabella. She didn't cook. She ordered expensive takeout that she barely touched. She didn't listen to Caleb's day. She talked over him about her Pilates instructor or the latest gossip at the country club. She spent money faster than Caleb could earn it, even with his promotion to junior partner. "We need a new boat," Tiffany whined one morning, throwing a credit card bill on the table. "The Davises have a yacht. We look like paupers with that rental." "Tiffany, we just bought the vacation home in Aspen," Caleb argued, rubbing his temples. The stress was making his hair thin prematurely. "I'm not made of money." "Then work harder," she snapped. "My father says you're up for the senior partner track. If you land the Omnicorp account, you'll get a huge bonus. Don't disappoint me, Caleb. I didn't marry a middle manager." The Omnicorp account. It was the white whale of the legal world. A massive, mysterious international conglomerate that was looking for North American representation. Rumor had it they were buying up tech startups and real estate all over the West Coast. Caleb threw himself into his work. He stayed late every night, avoiding the cold, empty perfection of his home. He drafted proposals. He schmoozed executives. He became ruthless, cutting corners and stepping on colleagues to get ahead. He told himself it was worth it. He was building an empire. He had no idea that Omnicorp was a shell company. He had no idea that the board of directors he was sending his proposals to reported to a single email address, and he certainly had no idea that the person reading his desperate, ambitious emails at 2:00 a.m. in a Swiss chalet was the woman he had kicked out into the rain. Isabella read every update Caleb sent. She watched him beg for the business. She watched him outline his strategies, his weaknesses, his firm's internal struggles. "He's desperate." "Dad," Isabella said one morning, sliding a tablet across the breakfast table. Alistair glanced at the screen. "He's over-leveraged. He's bought a house he can't afford and a wife who demands too much. If he doesn't get this account, he enters bankruptcy within 6 months." Isabella took a sip of her espresso. She looked different now. The messy bun and oversized sweaters were gone. Her hair was a sleek curtain of silk. She wore a tailored white suit that cost more than Caleb's car. Her posture was razor-sharp. "Give him the account," Isabella said. Alistair raised an eyebrow. "Give it to him. I thought we were going to crush him." "We are," Isabella smiled. "But you can't crush a man who's already on the ground. You have to lift him up first, make him feel like he's flying, make him dependent on us, Let him build his entire life around the income from this one client. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the snow. And then, she whispered, when he's standing on the peak thinking he's a god, I'll show him who really owns the mountain. The contract was signed a week later. Caleb Montgomery became the lead attorney for Omnicorp's Washington division. His salary tripled. He bought the yacht. Tiffany stopped complaining for a few months. For 3 years, Caleb rode the high. He was the golden boy of the firm. He didn't know he was dancing on a trapdoor. 4 years and 3 months after the divorce. The trap was set. The setting was New York City, the Metropolitan Gala for international business. It was the most exclusive event of the year, held at the Met Museum. Tickets cost $50,000 a plate. Caleb Montgomery was there. He felt like a king. He was now a senior partner, thanks to the massive fees generated by the Omnicorp account. He adjusted his silk tie, glancing at Tiffany. She looked beautiful, but her face was pinched. "Stop fidgeting," she hissed. "And for God's sake, try to get a photo with the mayor. We need the social capital." "Relax, Tiff," Caleb said, taking a glass of champagne. "We own this room. I'm the lead counsel for the biggest investment firm on the coast." "But you've never met the owner." Tiffany pointed out, her voice sharp. "It's weird, Caleb. You've been working for them for 3 years, and you've never met the chairman of Omnicorp. They value privacy." Caleb dismissed her. "Besides, tonight is the night. The memo said, the global director is finally making a public appearance to announce the acquisition of my law firm." That was the big news. Omnicorp was buying Caleb's law firm. Caleb was expected to be named the new managing CEO of the merged entity. It was the pinnacle of his career. The lights in the great hall dimmed. A hush fell over the crowd of billionaires, politicians, and celebrities. A spotlight hit the stage. A man in a tuxedo walked out, Arthur Pennyworth, the Sterling family's chief of staff, though Caleb didn't know him. "Ladies and gentlemen," Arthur's voice boomed. "Distinguished guests, for years Omnicorp has operated in the shadows, fueling the economy through strategic privacy. But tonight we step into the light. We are proud to announce that Omnicorp is fully integrating into its parent company." A murmur went through the crowd. "Baronat Company." Everyone thought Omnicorp was the top of the food chain. "Please welcome," Arthur continued, "the CEO of Sterling Global Holdings and the new owner of Vanguard Legal." The heavy velvet curtains parted. Caleb held his breath. He was ready to shake the hand of some old, grey-haired man. He was ready to bow and scrape. A woman stepped out. She was breathtaking. She wore a gown of midnight blue velvet that hugged her curves, shimmering with thousands of tiny crushed diamonds. Around her neck sat the Star of the East, a sapphire necklace worth more than the entire building they were standing in. Her dark hair was swept back, revealing a face of striking, terrifying beauty. The room erupted in applause. Caleb dropped his champagne glass. It shattered on the marble floor, the sound lost in the clapping. He blinked. He rubbed his eyes. "No," he whispered. That's impossible." Tiffany looked at him annoyed. "What is it? Who is she?" "She's stunning." Caleb's voice failed him. He felt like he was punching underwater. "That's Bella." "Bella," Tiffany scoffed. "Your frumpy ex-wife." "Don't be an idiot, Caleb. That woman is dripping in millions. That is Isabella Sterling, the daughter of Alistair Sterling. She's American royalty." Sterling. The name hit Caleb like a physical blow. Isabella Sterling. He flashed back to the small apartment, the way she had asked for a separation of assets, a forfeiture of spousal support. "Oh my God," Caleb wheezed. She tricked me." On stage, Isabella took the microphone. Her voice was amplified, clear and confident, a far cry from the soft-spoken woman who used to ask him if he wanted cream in his coffee. "Thank you," she said, her eyes scanning the crowd. She wasn't looking at the cameras. She was looking for someone. Her gaze stopped. It locked onto Caleb. Even from 50 feet away, he felt the chill. She smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a predator seeing a wounded deer. "Tonight is about evolution," Isabella said, holding his gaze. "It's about shedding the dead weight of the past and embracing true value. Sometimes in business as in life, we make poor investments. We underestimate assets because they aren't wrapped in shiny packages. But a true tycoon knows that the most valuable things are often the ones you overlook." The crowd cheered, thinking it was a metaphorical business speech. Caleb knew it was an obituary. She continued. "I am also happy to announce that as the new owner of Vanguard Legal, I will be conducting a full audit of the leadership team starting tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. sharp." She paused, tilting her head slightly. "I expect the current partners to be present, if they still have their jobs." She turned and walked off stage, the velvet train of her dress trailing behind her, like royal robes. "Caleb!" Tiffany tugged at his arm, her face pale. "Why was she looking at you, Caleb? You're shaking." "We have to go," Caleb stammered. I need to call Henderson. I need to fix this." "Fix what?" Tiffany screeched. "Go talk to her. She's your new boss. Schmooze her like you do everyone else." "I can't schmooze her, Tiffany," Caleb roared, causing people nearby to turn and stare. "I divorced her while she was 8 months pregnant. I told her she was nothing. I told her I wanted a woman with ambition." Tiffany stared at him. Then she looked at the stage where the multi-billionaire heiress had just stood. She looked back at her husband, realizing for the first time that he wasn't a rising star. He was a sinking ship. "You idiot," Tiffany hissed, pulling her hand away from his. Isabella was in the VIP green room, sipping water with lemon. The door opened, and Arthur walked in. "He's in the hallway, Miss Isabella. He's trying to get past security. He says it's a family emergency." Isabella laughed. "Family now, I'm family. Shall I have him removed?" "No." Isabella stood up, smoothing her dress. "Let him in. Let's see what he has to say." A moment later, the door burst open. Caleb rushed in, his face sweaty, his tie askew. He stopped short when he saw the 2 large bodyguards standing by the wall. "Bella," he breathed, walking toward her. "Bella, is it really you?" Isabella didn't move. She stood behind a high-backed chair, her fingers resting lightly on the velvet. "It's Ms. Sterling to you, Caleb, or Mom, since I sign your paychecks now." "Bella, please." Caleb put on his best sensitive guy face, the one he used to charm juries. I had no idea. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you hide this from me?" "Because I wanted to know if you loved me," she said calmly. "Or if you just loved the lifestyle I could provide." I got my answer. "I was stressed," Caleb pleaded, stepping closer. "I was young, I was ambitious, I made a mistake. But Bella, we had something real. We have a child." "Where is he?" "Where is our baby?" "My baby," she corrected him. "You signed away your rights. Remember, full custody to the mother. You didn't even want visitation. You wanted the apartment empty for Tiffany." I can fight that. Caleb's desperation turned to anger. I'm the father. You can't keep my son from me now that I know. Now that you know he's an heir. Isabella cut him off. You didn't want a son when he was a liability. You don't get him now that he's an asset. She walked around the chair and stood toe to toe with him. She was wearing heels, making her taller than him. Here is what is going to happen, Caleb. You are going to go home. You are going to sleep. And tomorrow you are going to come to my office. And you are going to beg. Beg for what? He spat. To keep your license, she whispered. Because I've been reviewing your work on the Omnicorp account. You cut a lot of corners, Caleb. You bribed a zoning official in Seattle 2 years ago to get a permit approved. I have the emails. Caleb's face went white. I did that for the client, for you. I never asked you to break the law. She smiled coldly. I just watched you do it. And now I own the evidence. She gestured to the door. Get out of my sight, Caleb. The real show is just beginning. As the security guards dragged a protesting Caleb out of the room, Isabella sat back down. Her hands were shaking slightly, but not from fear, from adrenaline. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number. Bring the car around, she said. I want to go home and kiss my son goodnight. She looked at her reflection in the mirror. The waitress was dead. The tycoon was wide awake. The next morning, the Manhattan offices of Vanguard Legal, formerly Caleb's Kingdom, felt like a funeral home. The usual buzz of paralegals and junior associates was gone. Everyone sat at their desks, heads down, terrified. Caleb walked in at 8:55 a.m. He looked haggard. He hadn't slept. He was wearing the same suit from the night before, though he had tried to press the wrinkles out with a hotel iron. Mr. Montgomery, the receptionist whispered, not making eye contact. They are waiting for you in Conference Room A. Conference Room A was known as the Fishbowl. It was a glass-walled room in the center of the floor. There was no privacy. If you were being fired in the fishbowl, the whole office watched you die. Caleb walked in. Isabella was sitting at the head of the long mahogany table. To her right sat Arthur Pennyworth. To her left sat 3 men Caleb recognized with a sinking heart, the internal auditors from the Bar Association. Sit, Isabella said, not looking up from a file she was reading. Caleb sat. The leather chair felt cold. Bella, look about the zoning permit. Ms. Sterling. She corrected him sharply. She slid a photo across the table. It was a grainy surveillance shot of Caleb handing an envelope to a city official in a parking garage. This is a felony, Caleb, she said calmly. Bribery of a public official. Under the RICO Act, this implicates the entire firm. You didn't just break the law, you endangered my acquisition. I did it to close the deal. Caleb's voice rose, cracking. The client Omnicorp. They pressured me. They said, get it done at any cost. Isabella leaned forward, her eyes like ice. I am Omnicorp, Caleb, and I never gave that order. I have the transcripts of every call. You acted alone because you wanted the bonus to buy a boat. The auditors scribbled furiously in their notepads. So, Isabella continued, clasping her hands. Here are your options. Option A. I turn this file over to the district attorney. You go to prison for 5 to 10 years. You get disbarred immediately. Caleb stopped breathing. The room spun. And option B. Option B, Isabella said, a cruel glint in her eye. You stay, but not as a senior partner. You are demoted to junior associate grade 1. You will be moved to the basement archives. Your job will be to manually redact sensitive documents for the next 5 years. Your salary will be minimum wage. No bonus, no office, no assistant. That's slavery, Caleb whispered. That's humiliation. That's mercy, Isabella countered. It keeps you out of jail. It keeps your name out of the papers for now. And it allows you to pay back the $400,000 bonus you illegally obtained. Every cent of your paycheck will be garnished until the debt is paid. She stood up. You have 1 minute to decide. Prison or the basement? Caleb looked through the glass walls. He saw his colleagues, the people he had bullied and bragged to, watching him. He saw the sneers. He thought of prison. He thought of the orange jumpsuit. He was a coward at heart. I'll take the basement, he choked out. Good choice, Isabella smiled. Arthur, show, mister. Montgomery to his new desk. It's next to the boiler room. Oh, and Caleb. He paused at the door, a broken man. You might want to check your phone. I believe Tiffany has been trying to reach you. Caleb fumbled for his phone. There were 20 missed calls and 1 text message. We need to talk. I'm at the house. Caleb raced back to the penthouse in a taxi he could barely afford. When he burst through the door, the place was in chaos. Movers were hauling out furniture, specifically the furniture Tiffany had picked out. Tiffany, Caleb yelled. What are you doing? Tiffany was in the bedroom throwing designer clothes into a Louis Vuitton trunk. She looked up, her face devoid of any emotion. I'm leaving, Caleb. I filed the papers an hour ago. Leaving now. Just because I'm having a bad day. A bad day. Tiffany laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. Caleb, you're done. Daddy told me everything. You're being investigated. You're demoted. You're earning minimum wage. Do you really think I signed up for this? I thought you loved me, Caleb cried, grabbing her arm. She shook him off violently. I loved the potential of you. I loved the senior partner. I loved the future CEO. I didn't marry a document clerk in a basement. You're a fraud, Caleb. You sold me a bill of goods. She zipped up the bag. And by the way, she added, walking to the door, the apartment is in my name. My father co-signed the mortgage. You have until tonight to get out. Where am I supposed to go? Caleb shouted, tears finally streaming down his face. I have nothing. She took everything. Tiffany stopped and looked back. For a second her expression softened, but not with pity, with realization. She didn't take anything, Caleb. You gave it to her. You handed her the gun and asked her to shoot. The door slammed shut. Caleb Montgomery slid down the wall until he hit the floor. He sat in the empty, silent hallway of a life that wasn't his anymore. He had no wife. He had no job. He had no money. Then a thought flickered in the darkness of his mind. A lifeline. The boy. Isabella had a son. His son. If he couldn't get the money from the job, and he couldn't get the money from the wife, maybe, just maybe, he could get to the sterling fortune through the air. He wiped his face. A desperate, manic plan began to form. He wasn't done yet. 2 weeks later, Central Park was bathed in the golden light of early autumn. It was a Saturday. Isabella was sitting on a bench near the sailboat pond, watching a small boy in a navy blue coat steer a remote-controlled boat. Alexander Leo, to his mom, was 4 years old. He was a quiet, observant child. He didn't run around screaming like the other kids. He stood by the water's edge, his brow furrowed in concentration, navigating his boat around the obstacles with precision. Isabella smiled, sipping her coffee. She had 2 bodyguards posted discreetly nearby, dressed as tourists. She felt safe. She felt victorious. He handles that boat well. Good reflexes. Isabella stiffened. She knew the voice. She didn't turn around. You're violating the restraining order, Caleb. My security will break your arm in about 10 seconds. Caleb walked around the bench and stood in front of her. He looked terrible. He had lost weight. His suit was frayed. He looked like a ghost of the man who used to check his reflection in every shop window. "Please, Bella, just 5 minutes. I just want to see him." Isabella looked at her son, then at Caleb. She signaled the bodyguards to hold back. "You have 2 minutes." Caleb stared at the boy. He saw his own dark curls. He saw the shape of his own jawline. A strange emotion welled up in his chest. Not love exactly, but a possessive pride. That was his blood. That was his ticket back to the high life. "He looks like me," Caleb whispered. "He looks like you," Isabella agreed. "But he acts like me." Caleb took a step toward the water. "Hey, buddy," he called out, putting on a bright fake smile. "That's a cool boat." Leo looked up. He had the sterling eyes grey and penetrating. He looked at Caleb with zero recognition. He didn't smile. He just assessed the stranger interrupting his playtime. "It's a schooner," Leo corrected him politely. "Not a boat." Caleb laughed nervously. "Right. A schooner. You know I used to have a boat like that. I'm an old friend of your mommy's." Leo looked back at the water. "Okay." Caleb knelt down, trying to get on eye level. "Actually, Leo, I'm more than a friend. I'm your daddy." The world seemed to stop. Isabella watched her heart hammering, but she didn't intervene. She wanted Caleb to see the truth. Leo stopped steering the boat. He turned fully to Caleb. He tilted his head. "My daddy?" Leo asked. "Yes?" Caleb said, his eyes filling with tears that were half real, half performance. "I'm your father, Leo. I've missed you so much. I want us to be a family. Do you want that? Do you want to come with me and get ice cream?" Leo looked at Caleb's outstretched hand. Then he looked at his mother. Isabella's face was unreadable. Leo looked back at Caleb. "My mommy told me about my father," Leo said clearly. Caleb's heart leaped. "She did? What did she say?" Leo took a deep breath, his small voice carrying over the wind. "She said my father was a bad investment. She said he sold his shares in me a long time ago." Caleb reeled back as if slapped. "Leo, no, that's not." And Leo continued, turning back to his remote control. "She said you can't buy back stock after the company goes public. It's too expensive for you." Leo revved the engine of his toy boat, steering it away from Caleb. "I don't want ice cream. I'm busy." Caleb remained kneeling in the dirt, stunned. Rejection from a woman was one thing. Rejection from his own 4-year-old son, delivered in the language of finance, was a dismantling of his soul. Isabella stood up. She walked over to Caleb and looked down at him. "You thought you could charm him?" she asked quietly. "You thought you could leverage him? Caleb, that boy has been sitting in board meetings since he was in diapers. He can smell desperation, and right now you reek of it." "He's my son," Caleb hissed, standing up. His fists clenched. "I have rights." "You signed them away for $10,000 and a Honda Civic," Isabella reminded him. "You put a price on him, and now you can't afford him." She signaled the guards. This time they moved in. "This is the last time you will ever see us," Isabella said. "Arthur has arranged a transfer for you. The basement job. It's moving." "Moving where?" Caleb panicked as the guards grabbed his arms. "We bought a small legal archiving firm in Nome, Alaska," Isabella said, checking her watch. "You start Monday. It's a 5-year contract. If you quit, you owe us the $400,000 immediately. If you go, you have a job, a small cabin and heating." She leaned in close. "I suggest you buy a warm coat, Caleb. It gets very cold when you're alone." Bella, no. You can't do this, Caleb screamed as the guards dragged him away from the playground. I'm sorry, I love you. I love him. Isabella didn't look back. She walked to the water's edge and sat next to her son. Leo looked up at her. Was that the man? Yes, Leo. That was the man. He looked sad, Leo observed. He is sad, Isabella said, stroking her son's hair. He learned a very hard lesson today. What lesson? Isabella looked at the ripples in the water. That you should never throw away a diamond just because it's covered in a little bit of dust. Leo nodded, satisfied. Can we get ice cream now? Yes. Isabella smiled, the last weight of the past finally lifting off her shoulders. We can get anything we want. Time is a cruel architect. It builds some men into monuments and grinds others into dust. 15 years had passed since the day in the park. 15 years that had spun the world on its axis. The tech bubbles had burst, and reformed governments had changed, and the Seattle skyline had been rewritten. At the center of that new skyline stood the Sterling Tower. It was a needle of obsidian and glass that pierced the clouds, a building so tall it seemed to look down on God. It was the headquarters of Sterling Global, now the most valuable private equity firm on the planet. And tonight the tower was glowing. It was the night of the Ascension Gala. The press had been buzzing about it for months. Isabella Sterling, the Ice Queen of venture capital, was officially stepping down as CEO. She was handing the throne to her son Alexander Leo Sterling on his 20th birthday. Inside the lobby, the atmosphere was suffocatingly expensive. The floors were Italian marble white as bone. The chandeliers were waterfalls of crystal. The air smelled of lilies and money. In the corner, near a massive pillar wrapped in gold leaf, a man was trying to make himself invisible. He wore a grey jumpsuit that was 2 sizes too big. His name tag, crooked and scratched, read, Cal. He held a mop bucket, his knuckles swollen with arthritis. His skin mapped with the deep lines of a man who had spent 2 years squinting against the cold. Caleb Montgomery was 45, but he looked 60. The years had not been kind since the day in Central Park. The job in Alaska had broken his spirit. The cold had seeped into his bones, and the isolation had eaten his mind. When he finally quit, he found that the name Sterling had a long shadow. No law firm would hire him. No bank would give him a loan. He had drifted south, working on fishing boats, then as a night watchman, and finally as a janitor for a contract cleaning service. Fate, with its twisted sense of humor, had assigned him to this building 3 months ago. He knew who owned it. Every time he buffed the brass plaque out front, he saw her name. Sterling. But he needed the health insurance. He needed the meal ticket. So he kept his head down, grew a beard to hide his face, and prayed that the woman who lived in the penthouse never looked down. Hey, Cal, the shift supervisor hissed, snapping his fingers. Wake up. The motorcade is 2 minutes out. If I see a single speck of dust on this floor, you're fired. Do you hear me, fired? I hear you, Caleb rasped. His voice was a rusted hinge. He hadn't used it for anything other than apologies in years. He hurriedly pushed the mop across a smudge on the marble. His heart was hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He should have called in sick. He shouldn't be here. But he couldn't look away. He had to see them. Just once. Outside, the roar of the city died down, replaced by the heavy thrum of engines. Through the glass walls, Caleb saw the flashbulbs of the paparazzi exploding like fireworks. A line of black limousines pulled up to the curb, sleek and silent as sharks. The revolving doors spun. A hush fell over the lobby. The senators, the tech billionaires, and the socialites all stopped their chatter. They turned toward the entrance with the reverence usually reserved for royalty. The first figure to enter was Isabella. Caleb gripped the handle of his mop so hard, his fingers turned white. She was magnificent. Time hadn't aged her. It had refined her. She moved with a lethal grace, wearing a gown of liquid silver that trailed behind her like moonlight. Her dark hair was swept up, revealing the long, elegant neck he used to kiss in their cramped apartment. But the softness was gone. Her eyes were sharp, scanning the room not with anxiety, but with the boredom of a conqueror. She didn't look like a woman who had ever cried over a divorce settlement. She looked like a woman who owned the ink the settlement was written in, and then stepping out from behind her was the boy. Leo. Caleb's breath hitched in his throat. The last time he had seen him, Leo was a toddler with a toy boat. Now he was a man. He was tall, taller than Caleb ever was, with broad shoulders filling out a bespoke tuxedo. He had Caleb's dark curls, unruly and thick, but he had Isabella's posture. He walked with an easy confidence, smiling at the crowd, shaking hands. He didn't look arrogant. He looked good. He looked like the kind of man Caleb had pretended to be for his entire life. That's my blood. Caleb thought, a hot tear leaking out of his eye. I made him. But as he watched, a crushing realization fell on him. He hadn't made him. He had merely provided the biology. Isabella had made him. She had chiseled this young king out of the marble of hardship, while Caleb had been busy chasing a skirt named Tiffany. The entourage began to move toward the private elevators at the back of the lobby. They were walking straight toward the pillar where Caleb was hiding. Run his brain screamed. Turn around. Hide. But his feet were lead. He was frozen, a statue of regret. Isabella was 10 feet away, then 5, then 2. She stopped. She had spotted a microscopic smudge on the pillar Caleb was standing next to. She turned her head. Her gaze landed on him. Caleb stopped breathing. This was it. The moment of reckoning. She would recognize him. She would scream. She would have security throw him out. Or worse, she would laugh. She would point him out to their son and say, "Look, Leo, look at the failure." Caleb prepared his soul for the blow. He looked straight into her eyes, pleading silently. "It's me, Bella. It's Caleb. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Isabella looked at him. She looked at his grey uniform. She looked at his dirty mop bucket. She looked at his face, staring deep into his eyes. For 3 agonizing seconds, their gazes locked. Then Isabella blinked. Her expression didn't change. There was no spark of recognition, no anger, no pity. Nothing. To her, he was just part of the architecture. He was a prop. He was the help. The man who had broken her heart, the man who had driven her to build an empire, had become so insignificant that his face no longer registered in her memory. She turned away, dismissing his existence entirely. "The flowers are lovely, Arthur," she said to her assistant, her voice cool and melodious. "But let's ensure the upstairs lighting is dimmed." "Yes, ma'am," Arthur replied. She kept walking. Caleb felt his knees buckle. It wasn't hatred that killed him in that moment. It was the indifference. He wasn't a villain in her story anymore. He wasn't even a footnote. He was a ghost. He slumped against the pillar, defeated. But the procession wasn't over. Leo was following his mother, but he had paused. He had seen the interaction, or the lack of one. He saw the old janitor staring at his mother with a look of devastation. Leo stopped. He broke away from the group and walked over to Caleb. Caleb looked up, terrified. Did the boy know? Did he remember the man in the park? Leo stood in front of him. Up close, he smelled of expensive cologne and optimism. He looked at Caleb's shaking hands. He looked at the tear track cutting through the grime on Caleb's cheek. "Rough night, sir?" Leo asked. His voice was deep, kind. Caleb tried to speak, but his throat was full of dust. He just nodded. "You know," Leo said softly, glancing at the mop. "My mother always says that the people who keep the building standing are more important than the people sitting in the offices." Caleb flinched. It was something Isabella used to say to him when he was a stressed-out junior lawyer. "It's okay to be small, Caleb, as long as you're strong." Leo reached into his tuxedo pocket. He pulled out a money clip peeled off a crisp, fresh $100 bill and held it out. "Here," Leo said. "Go get yourself a hot meal, or a drink. Nobody should be working this hard on a Tuesday night." Caleb stared at the money. It was Benjamin Franklin staring back at him in judgment. He slowly reached out. His rough, calloused hand brushed against his son's smooth, manicured fingers. The contact sent a shockwave through Caleb's body. "Thank you," Caleb whispered, his voice cracking. You're a good man." Leo smiled. It was Caleb's smile, the one he had lost 20 years ago. "I had a good teacher. Take care of yourself." Leo patted Caleb on the shoulder, a casual, benevolent gesture from a superior to a subordinate, and turned away. "Leo," Isabella called from the elevator bank. "We're holding the door." "Coming, Mum." Leo jogged across the marble floor, his tuxedo shoes clicking rhythmically. Caleb watched them. He saw Isabella put her hand on Leo's back. He saw them laugh at something the senator said. He saw the golden doors of the private elevator slide shut, sealing them into a world of light and power. The lobby fell silent again. Caleb Montgomery stood alone in the center of the empire he could have ruled. He looked down at the $100 bill in his hand. It wasn't a gift. It was a transaction. He had traded his wife, his son, and his legacy for the illusion of freedom. And now the universe had given him his change. He crumpled the bill into his pocket, gripped the mop handle, and turned back to the floor. There was still a smudge on the marble, and he had a job to do. Isabella Sterling proved that the greatest revenge isn't screaming or fighting or destroying your enemy. The greatest revenge is simply outgrowing them. Caleb Montgomery chased the illusion of wealth and lost the reality of love. He thought he was discarding a burden, but he was actually throwing away a winning lottery ticket. In the end, Isabella didn't need to punish Caleb. Life did that for her. She raised a king, built an empire, and forgot the name of the man who said she was nothing. The man who wanted to be a tycoon ended up cleaning the floors of the woman who actually became one. Remember, friends, be careful who you step on while you're climbing the ladder, because the person you betray today might be the one holding the safety net tomorrow, or the one who decides to let you fall. Wow. I honestly have to take a second after that ending. That moment in the lobby, when she looked right through him, that hit harder than any screaming match could have. It's the ultimate erasure, and Leo giving him the tip. Poetic justice at its finest. What do you guys think? Did Caleb deserve that level of isolation, or did you feel a tiny bit sorry for him in the end? And if you were, Isabella, would you have acknowledged him or was ignoring him? The ultimate power move. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I love reading your theories and reactions. If this story of karma and redemption kept you hooked, please do me a huge favor. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss another story. We have some insane dramas coming up next week that you won't want to miss. Thanks for watching. Stay kind, and remember, know your worth, and never let anyone treat you like a bad investment.